Thank you, Chairman, friends on the dais, dignitaries on the dais and off the dais. So my topic for this session is regulatory and statutory requirements. So I'm an eye surgeon associated with my practice as a practicing ophthalmologist as well as with NABH for the last 9 years in various capacities. I do visit many hospitals and meet consultants across India on. Right, let me finish this. I have no financial interest in this topic, and whatever you see here are interpretation to simplify and convey the set of rules and regulation required for a private practitioner as well as a consultant working in a hospital. And most of these are given as a rule book in not only MCI Code of Ethics as well as in many of the criminal and civil laws. So it is important for healthcare professionals to be aware and follow the legal aspect, because every aspect of life is governed by certain laws and legal responsibilities. For example, today I got delayed here because of a simple mistake by my driver. He crossed the wrong side of the traffic, so he had to really answer the cop for almost 10 minutes. So each and every law has its own advantages. If we start following that, we'll be away from the troubles. So basically, the legal responsibilities for professionals are two types: the civil law and criminal law. Civil law deals with the legal relationship between the people, our stakeholders, patients primarily, and this is basically on the law of torts and contracts. And criminal law dealing with wrongs against a patient or against society, for example, practicing without license, misuse of narcotics, theft or murder within your premises. So basically, regulation. So you need to understand certain terminologies before we go into the details. Regulation, an instrument mandated by the government. It is given by the government based on minimum standard, and if your hospital is need to follow the regulation, there will be some inspection and enforcement, and there will be a public accountability. Statutory means related to statutes, or the other name is law or regulations. So compliance means just adherence to it. So statutory compliance means you have to follow or the set of guidelines. Statutory requirement means for each and every law there are certain minimum requirements. This is not maximum, this is a very minimum requirement expected of your hospital. For example, the hospital license is issued to open as well as operate your facility. So it does not address the process. How you really work in that area, it doesn't address. So what statutory regulation gives us, it provides, it ensures that the providers address to basic minimum standards. So what we need to do is not only follow that in letter, but also in spirit. But this is where the variation happens. For quality or accreditation, we need that not only in the letter, but also in the spirit. Oft-repeated complaint in the media is the health is unregulated industry, right? So you open any national media or print or electronic, the first thing there is unregulated private healthcare or unregulated governmental healthcare. These are some of the national health legislations. There are about 72 laws governing the healthcare industry or hospitals. Probably one of the highly regulated industry if you see in terms of number of statutes and law. But unfortunately, many of them are not followed or not really implemented in its spirit. So healthcare laws, there are three main sources: statutes, case law, and codes of conduct. So what it means is, statutes are regulations that must be adhered to. For example, if you are running a hospital, you have to have a license either from the central government or state government or local body. And some of the laws are specific for medical field only, some of them not specific to medicine. For example, the Data Protection Act. If you are having a EMR, you need to adhere with the Data Protection Act, security and confidentiality. case law is concerned with the principle derived from interpretation of individual court judgment. Suppose Supreme Court judgment for a particular case, for example, the Kunal Shah case. So it operates on the basic mandate of consent, confidentiality, and medical negligence. So this we call as common law for medical practice. And third is governing the individual practitioners. The individual practitioners are governed by the code of conduct we sign when we registered with the medical council. So whatever the code of conduct or ethics prescribe, the individual doctors have to abide by it. So this is the overview of laws relevant to hospitals. The first one is registration and licensing requirement. The second one is common acts or laws applicable to hospitals, including clinics. Third one is the laws relating to the functioning of healthcare centers. For example, IT Act, PF Act, ESI, all these are related to functioning of the hospitals. And fourth one is the Public Health Legislations Act, because particularly when you have a cluster infections, you need to notify the authorities. So this is a Public Health Act and you are bound by this. So this is the overview of what are all the laws or registration requirement for a license for a hospital to start with. The company, so if you are a company or private establishment, you need to register under the Companies Act, or if it's an individual proprietorship, or if it's a trust, charitable and religious trust act. All these are governed by its own rules and regulations. You have to start a practice, you need to have a building permit, NOC, for fire and fire safety rules have to be complied with. Then license to operate lift, all those things are state subjects. Some of the states have lift law, lift license, some of them they don't have. These are some of the act. I will not go into the details. So just to highlight that so many laws are governing the way we practice and the way we run our hospitals. So I'll just, these are statutory documentation. This is required not only to safeguard yourself, but also to improve the quality of your practice. Clinical documentation, medical legal records, we all know the importance of documentation. And income tax records, now we all come under the so many acts of income tax, not only the regular income tax, now also service tax, and suddenly there is one tax on the ICU bills and operation theatre as well as LASIK bills. So pharmacy records are necessary. I-banking come under the Organ Transplantation Act. And if you have more than 10 employees, you come under PF and ESA Act. So avoiding medico-legal problem, the first thing is to comply with all statutory, regulatory and professional responsibilities. These are some of the overview of the simple laws you have to really follow. One is, if you have a building for your hospital, you need to have adequate space, lighting, ventilation as per the National Building Code. And once you open the building, you need to get a completion certificate as well as fire safety license. And once you start the hospital or manage the hospital, you need to register under the relevant provisions. And you also need to provide safe and hazard-free environment for your patients. So that is governed by the fire NOC, PCB clearance, and biomedical wastage. If you start working on the Pollution Control Board, this is probably one of the strictest rule implemented in the country now. The code of conduct for both nurses as well as doctors, it governs the moral authority as well as it is legally binding. And these are some of the laws relevant to individual professionals. You need to display your registration number. All prescriptions, certificates, money receipts should carry your registration number. You can suffix only the medical council recognized degrees. You can't add all degrees to your name. And this is governing the advertisement in media, should not contribute to the lay press articles and give interviews. Probably one of the right. So you are open to write to the lay press under your own name, but it should not be in the manner of advertising yourself. And becoming a member in a medical society like AOS, it is a mandated rule now under the Medical Council ethics. You have to be a member of a professional body. You need to get CME credit points. This is the minimum number, 30 hours for 5 years. So that should be organized by a recognized professional body. We all know the important nature of biomedical wastage, and that has to be abided by if you are and so at source segregation has to be there. You also need to know the rights of patients with reference to the Right to Information Act. This is a recent new law, and it is being followed in many court cases as well as by the human rights organizations. Security of patients is important. Hospital proprietor or admin is accountable and punishable if there are any security issues to the patient under your care. Safe medication, again, the pharmacy license has to be necessary if you have a pharmacy within your premises. The Drug and Cosmetic Act, if you are prescribing or using narcotics in your practice, see to that the narcotics are all regulated under a license. HR management, again, if you're running a hospital, all these are statutory compliances required. ESI, Provident Fund, Profession Tax, the list is endless if you have many number of hospitals. And we all come under the additional act called Essential Services Maintenance Act, and also you need to register under the Shop and Establishment Act in some of the states. And we have to abide by the employment rules and see to that your nurses or doctors always have a nursing council as well as medical council registration things. Insurance is coming up in a big way. They all need a lot of documentation, and we need to abide by the statutory requirements under this. So these are some of the deficiencies we commonly see in the hospitals without proper registration with the state. So many of our doctors do go to the other states. So you need to get registered with the state government where you are working and get the state medical council number. This is very, very important for practice. And see to that your employees also doesn't violate this regulation. You cannot refuse a patient under emergency, whether if you are a practicing ophthalmologist also, so if there is a general emergency, you have to take care of the patient first, provide first aid, and then transfer him under safe situations. Non-discrimination, you have to take care of this issue as well, and access to maintenance of records is your job, not somebody's job. Patient have a right to have the record any point of time. If there is a request, you need to provide. And again, we also have some Confidential Information Act. So this we often find in the media. Doctors are very happy describing their good results in the public, particularly with celebrities. So you cannot discuss these issues in the public or in the media. If at all you want to disclose, you have to get a consent from the concerned patients. Never share confidential information about the patient with the visitors, whether he is close relative or friend, and particularly be careful with the representatives of news media and even your fellow workers. And this is one of common mistakes we make. Just like that, correct the mistakes in the case records or alter the case records. So do not erase or mark out mistakes made on patient records, particularly manual records. Cross out errors with one single line, and then insert the correct information, initial and date, get it cross-verified by your consultant. Nowadays, we use a lot of computer records, EMR. We have to maintain the confidentiality of computer records, use relevant code for access, and see to that the information is secure and the doctors constantly monitor and evaluate the computer usage. And this is just the overview of the statutory requirements required for an individual as well as practitioners in the hospital sector. So, being a short talk, this is what we'll be able to cover. So, we need to take care of this regulation, remember this, and then so that we are free from any civil or criminal cases in our practice. Thank you very much.